Good afternoon. I want to welcome everybody to our HASP class this afternoon. I'm Susan Couch. I will be the coordinator for the course today. And I represent the Science, Medical, and Technology Committee. So we're excited to present this topic. But first, I've been asked to make a few announcements. First and foremost, to those who may be joining us in person in the HASP classroom for the first time, welcome. We are so happy to have you here. And I just want to point out Roseanne and Lance Embers, if you want to either stand or raise your hands. There you go. Welcome to HASP. Very happy to have you here. Next, you might remember, or may recognize a new face in the HASP office. That is Amy Weber. There she is. She's walking up here now. She's our new office and project manager. She comes from the U.S. Department of Commerce, but has resided in Holland for 3 years. Her and her family are movie buffs, and they love exploring the myriad of public events hosted in and around Holland. Please join me in welcoming Amy. Lastly, as we approach a new month, we are happy to invite you to our monthly program hosted next Tuesday, October 4th, at 9:30 a.m. at the Jack H. Miller Center for Musical Arts. The presentation is titled Saving Journalism and Democracy Even as Newspapers Die. Coffee and cookies will be served beginning at 9 a.m. We hope to see you all there. So takes care of our housekeeping here. Now on to the interesting stuff that you came here for today. I'm really excited to welcome Pete Hoffswell. He is from Holland BPW. He's responsible for the broadband access, which I think everybody's very well aware that we just had the millage get approved this summer. So it's very exciting that we're able to have this discussion today. He leads the broadband service for the Holland Board of Public Works, which is a community-owned open access fiber optic network. That's a really critical way to describe it. Pete has a bachelor's in computer science from Illinois University, along with several industry certifications. So let's give a warm welcome to Pete.
Thank you, Susan, and thanks, everybody. It's nice to see you today. Yes, I went to school in Southern Illinois. It's at the very south end of Illinois. So I think I heard you guys talking about Chicago, so you know where Southern Illinois is. Many Chicagoans that couldn't get into the really nice schools went to Southern. So big, giant state school, and I was one of those kids. I graduated from school and moved to Chicago. I lived in the city and worked in information technology for several years before I met my wife on the job. She's from Holland. So that's how we ended up back in Holland. I've worked for many years for different firms in the West Michigan area. And I was very fortunate 6 years ago to follow my passion of developing connectivity for communities by working with the BPW and starting work there. So that's sort of how I ended up here where I am today. We actually live right downtown. I live on the other end of Hope campus on College Avenue. And my one neighbor is a frat house and the other neighbor is a sorority house. So it's exciting times. But I'm here to talk today about broadband in Holland, Michigan and fiber optics. And Holland has been a leader in this this area of municipal connectivity for many, many years. And we're going to tell that story of how we got to where we are today and what we're going to do through the future. So that's what we're going to talk about. I am wide open to a conversational mode. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop in and help me steer the conversation in the way you guys want it to go. I'm open. You folks online, feel free to fill in on the chat there. And the folks in the office, or excuse me, in the room here will be able to convey those questions to me. So make sure to wave me down back there, Ian. Appreciate it. We just celebrated just a few years ago the 125th anniversary of the Holland Board of Public Works. So we've been around a long time. And early in our, I have presentation that wants to forward itself. Don't do that. There we go. I think we got that fixed. In 1883, who knows when Holland was founded? I can't remember the number. 1847, Van Raalte came, and you're right. I think it was pretty quickly after that they founded the town of Holland. So it wasn't much further past that. We decided we needed public water. We started with water in 1883. In 1892, we had power in town and have moved on to some other innovative things. I'll talk about power here in a second a little bit more. In 1988, who was around when we started building snowmelt? You guys remember? Wasn't it crazy? What a wild idea back then. That passed by one vote in city council. And I think the community was probably divided about 50-50 at that time too, about digging up and investing in our downtown. But you that have been around for a while will remember that downtown was sort of a little run down. This is the mall era. Business had moved off to the mall over on 31, and downtown was really suffering. So part of the revitalization of our downtown is due to that innovative idea and that decision to take a risk and build that snowmelt system downtown. 1992, we did that too with fiber. We wanted to build an infrastructure that would serve our utility and our community. In 1992, so it's 30 years ago, we started building fiber. Do you know when the World Wide Web started? In about 1992. So the internet barely existed back then. Who would have thought that we would be where we are today back in 1992? But Holland was building the infrastructure back then to support what we need and do today. 2017, we built the Holland Energy Park, which was a community decision that we worked on together. The BPW worked with the city and the residents of the city to decide what we're going to do about our old power plant, the James D. Young power plant out on the lake. We retired that plant, shut it down, and built our new energy park, which is one of the most efficient power plants in the country. And that's because we use the waste heat to melt the snow on the snow melt system. That's a story for another day. In 2018, we built high-density fiber downtown to explore the idea of providing broadband service to everybody in our community. From 92 up till that time, we were really focused on business and large industry in town that needed really high-speed connectivity and were willing to pay for it. But the community is much more than those businesses. We need to find a way to provide connectivity to everybody, and that's what we started working on in 2018 and follow through to Holland City Fiber, and we'll get into that in some more detail. You know, way back in 1892, when we decided that we were going to do power, that's when the Columbia exhibition was. And sorry about that. Stay. Columbia exhibition, the Chicago World's Fair, was famous for one thing most. That was the Great White City. That was the introduction of power to the world, was in 1893. In 1892, we already had power in Holland. So we were on the cutting edge back with power back then. We started with gas lights because Holland was growing so much that industry was starting to move goods and services around at night. And that was by horse-drawn carriage. And they were starting to have dangerous situations with these carriages running around all around town. They put gas lights in. The lights were not enough. So they built Wolverine Electric, built powered lights. In 1890, we actually came up with the easements for power poles. So how do you build power poles in a town? You need to put them in land. You need to put them in Holland, it's in your backyard for the most part. These rights of way were developed in 1890. So this was years before even the World's Fair. 100 years later, we were having a very similar conversation in this realm with fiber optic cable. Now we had communications in town. We had a phone company, we had cable TV, and we were talking about building fiber optics, this new infrastructure. Holland Board of Public Works wanted to build fiber first and foremost to make our power utility and our water utilities more reliable and more efficient. So if you drive around town, you've seen our power poles that all connect to substations. We need to monitor and control those substations. And that was done in a manual process back then. We had substation operators that were monitoring and controlling that system. We wanted to be able to more effectively do that. So we wanted to build a fiber optic network to interconnect all those substations, and then ultimately all our lift stations for our waste treatment, pump stations for water and so forth. When we were working on that project, we decided, well, if we have extra capacity on that fiber network that we're not using for the utility itself, can we make that available to the public? And we had in the 1992, 1993, when we were starting to build it, we had a community discussion about this. We'll have extra fiber capacity. Can we open that up and make that available to the community? If you go back and look in the paper at that time, you'll see comments like this. You wouldn't sell the streets to private automotive companies. The city owns the street and everyone uses it. And Morawski, who was the head of Holland Board of Public Works at the time, Tim Morawski, said that in city council. We decided at that time to go ahead and build an open access fiber optic infrastructure as we were building this that is really like digital roads. Now, how many of you sat in any of my sessions for Holland City Fiber? I know you guys were there. So some of these stories sound familiar to you. That's a discussion we've just had again here as part of Holland City Fiber. It's amazing to see this repeating theme in Holland of let's look at this innovative thing and let's make a decision on whether it's a good idea and go for it. We saw it with electricity, we saw it with the snowmelt system, and we've seen it with fiber optics, where the community is saying, let's think about building infrastructure for our town that is not just to serve the needs of today, but to serve the needs of the future. And we're not exactly sure what the future will bring. So let's check as many boxes as we can to say this is an infrastructure that we think is going to help us do that. It's amazing. What was it like in 1890 when they built traffic lights, or they built street lights so they could get around town even before cars were here? The first thing they lit up in 1890, they lit up the first lights in Holland on Christmas Eve. It was only months later that the owners of the stores on A Street here are like, if I could get lights into my business, I'd be able to stay open longer, because the gas lights I have today, they're not bright enough. It doesn't attract customers in. They come in during the day. I could stay open later if I had electric lights. The first demand, one of the first demands we had was to bring it into buildings. My house is 1926, and it was built with electricity. It wasn't 10 years before that somebody was deciding to build a house and was trying to figure out, do I want to put this electricity in my house or not? I mean, 20 years before that, it's 1906. Electricity was such a brand new thing. But now you look at it and it is ubiquitous across the way, and fiber optics is the same way. It is a ubiquitous infrastructure that's going to last a long, long time. What does fiber look like? What is the what are we talking about when you say fiber optics and broadband? If you walk around town on the left side, you can see some aerial cables there. And do you see the this funny thing here that looks like a snowshoe or maybe a teardrop? We call it a snowshoe. That is a fiber optic storage loop. Fiber optics looks something like this cable here. If you bend it far enough, it will snap. And so we have to be very careful on the bend radius of that fiber. And that is done by these fiber optic storage loops or snowshoes that you see in town. So if you walk along and see one of those, you can pretty much be assured that that's some fiber optic cable up there. And is it BPW's fiber or somebody else's fiber? Might be. But if you look really closely, and you might need to bring like your bird spotting scope to be able to see this. But if you see a label that says Holland BPW fiber optics on it, well, that's certainly Holland BPW's fiber. AT&T, Comcast, 123.net, and many other providers have fiber in our town as well. As you walk around town, you might notice, if you look down instead of up, which is a good idea when you're walking, you should look down, not up. Little plates in the sidewalk are right next to the sidewalk. You can see one right here. That is what we call a handhole or a vault. And that is for underground buried fiber optic cable. You see something like this inside. This is called a splice case. You can see two fiber optic cables. For those online, I'm looking at the upper right-hand corner of this slide here. You can see the black fiber optic cables coming into this case where the cable is broken apart and individual strands of fiber optic cable are spliced together. On the left side, you can see one of those splice cases right here in the middle of the picture. That is the infrastructure around town that as you walk around, you can, you'll see it. These handholds are also used for electricity. They're used for our snow melt system, and many different communications companies have them. Even irrigation systems will have them. This little green patch here in this example is electrical street lighting handhole. So you might not want to open one up and poke around in there because some of them are pretty dangerous with the electricity. We do not share handholds with other utilities because of that. The electric service is risky to our fiber optic engineers, so we stay out of there and we do our own. A fiber optic cable is actually made up of a bunch of individual fiber optic strands that are, the actual fiber strand is the width of a human hair. It's a very tiny, tiny strand. And here in the lower left corner, you can see a cable that's made up of a number of tubes that these colored blue, orange, green, and so forth tubes have inside of them a cluster of fibers. And that as a whole makes up the fiber optic cable. I have one here and to send around to you guys to take a look at. This fiber optic cable is 144 strands. You can see the individual tubes, and if you take a close look, you'll see the individual fiber optic strands. The glass fiber optic filament is inside of these tiny little ones. So this is actually plastic coating over the fiber. But you can take a look. This is a piece of conduit that we quite often move fiber optic cables underground. So I'll go ahead and send both of those for you guys to take a look at. And if you're online, sorry, you should have come. It's the price of convenience, I guess, but it's okay. You call me anytime and come on over, I'll show you more fiber. What does it look like around town? You can see the fiber optic would run on the pole. You see how it's not at the top of the pole? The top of the pole is the power area. Power is at the top of the pole. Below that is the communications zone. You'll see one or more, and in the picture on the left here, These very small cables are small because they're far away. They're actually very big. This is part of our 138 kilovolt distribution network in Holland. It's very at the top of the poles. There's a power local distribution that would be providing power to the homes in this area. And below that is communications layer. You can see there's fiber on this run and on this one. So that's how this is set up. On the lower right-hand corner, you can see the fiber optic cable is running from pole to pole with a splice case. It splices and can drop off to a distribution cabinet. This is where we can take fiber, this multi-lane digital highway of a fiber optic cable, split it into multiple paths by connecting to other fibers. Move from pole, go down. Typically for a home, you would go down the pole, go underground up to the side of the home. And that's how fiber to the home typically is built. We could also go from the pole right to the home as well in an aerial fiber, which would look a lot like what you might have on your house today, where you have your cable TV company's cable comes along and strung along like that. If you live on the edge of town, much of that is underground, so you might have it underground. Each individual strand of fiber optic cable can carry 10 gigabits of data and more. We're working on developing our Holland City fiber to be a 10 gigabit network. Single strand will carry 10 gigabits. And technically, it can go much higher than that. They have in the lab massive, no, let me get this right. I've misspoke. We're building ours for 10 gigabits, and 10 terabits is 1,000 times that. So it's 1,000 meg, and they have equipment to do that today. And the physics of fiber optic cable, they haven't even reached the limit of it yet. In copper cable, they are reaching the limit of the physical characteristics of carrying a signal down a copper wire or a copper cable is limited. And that is quite often why you see on your internet service, your download speed is one speed and the upload speed is a different speed. That's because they're rationing out the total bandwidth that they have on that pipe. So twisted wire copper, which is what phone lines are on, might be about that much bandwidth. Mostly people need to download, so they provision that with most download and a bit of upload. Cable TV is cable internet service can do about 2 gigabits today. They're engineering to do, I think, 4, 6, or 10 gigabits. They're working on the technology. That's about that big. Once again, they only have that much bandwidth, so they're going to provision it mostly for download and some for upload. They have the ability to dial that up. So we'll see what cable internet service comes by. Fiber optic cable is like this. It is exponentially more bandwidth than is available in a classic copper infrastructure. So it's very exciting. It is a technology that will serve the needs of today. Like I said, we're working on a 10 gigabit network, and into the future, technologies are already doing 10 or 1 terabit and 10 terabit. That makes sense? It's getting a little deep on the techie stuff. Yes.
Is once you put the glass in the ground or on the poles, you can change the electronics to get the greater speeds.
Right.
So the fiber doesn't change, but the electronics do. And as the electronics get smarter, more sophisticated, you can carry more data. That's why the investment in the fiber is fundamental. And then you just keep evolving the electronics as time goes on.
Absolutely. Our downtown project is, we call our shared gigabit service. Does anybody live downtown is on our shared gigabit service? Well, if you're not, that's all right. Feel free to go to any coffee shop because they're all subscribed to our gigabit service. You can try it out. Most of the restaurants in town also use our shared gigabit service. This is on a technology called GPON, which stands for Gigabit Passive Optical Network. The PON, or passive optical network, is exactly what David, right? Exactly what David's talking about. It is it's a piece of fiber. You put it in the ground, you leave it alone, you use it for whatever you need, and it's good to go. That's the passive optical part. So the fiber that we're building out for Holland City Fiber will be a passive optical network, which means it'll serve our needs today and well into the future, because it's just like laying the roads. Once you've got the roads in, you're good to go. Where are we today with the Holland Board of Public Works broadband services? We have over 260 miles of fiber that runs throughout the city of Holland. You can see there in this picture, but it also runs in the Northeast all the way to Jenison. That's Jenison High School in the Northeast. We partnered with Ottawa County School District, Ottawa County ISD, when they said, we need to build fiber out there. And we said, well, we'll build with you too, because someday Holland is going to need to get out of town with all this fiber. We need what is called a backhaul. And this gets us most of the way to the larger connections of internet connectivity in the Grand Rapids area. While we're at it, let's go ahead and build north with Ottawa ISD up to the ISD's Education Services Building and the Tech Center that's off of Port Sheldon. That's what you see right there. And to the southeast, well, let's go ahead and build to Hamilton, the Hamilton High School, and Saugatuck High School. So we've been, if you look at the power service area for Holland Board of Public Works, it's the city of Holland and the neighboring townships. So you can see that our fiber infrastructure covers our power infrastructure pretty closely, but we go beyond that. There's a couple interesting things that I'll quiz you on. What do you think this line is here that goes straight west all the way out to Tunnel Park? What do you think that is? Water treatment plant. Absolutely. Water treatment needs connectivity to the greater network at BPW for computing services. It also needs to be able to connect up to the internet to communicate with like Eagle on water quality, to do research and reporting. That's their fiber optic cable. Well, what's been happening on Lakewood this summer? Anybody? Brand new water main. So Lakewood, a whole section of Lakewood has been dug up here. We had to relocate part of our fiber because where they wanted to put the water main is where our power poles were, which is where our fiber was. So we actually relocated 3 or 4 or 5 poles along there, which was quite a project just for us, let alone water. Isn't this interesting? There is a lot of fiber here on the north side of town and on the south side of town. And even coming up into Zeeland here, there's some extra fiber running out. Any thoughts of why that is? Nope, it's beyond our power. It's a good guess, very good guess. When you look at the growth of our community, where is the growth? The growth is on the edges of town where the undeveloped land is. Companies come in, we have industrial parks, we have new factories, we have industry out there. This is places where business is starting, but the communications that they need isn't there. And the best chance that these companies on the edge of town to get great connectivity was to call the BPW and say, can you build fiber to us? We're like, sure, we can do that. So we see a lot of that. If you look at the detail of Zeeland, the east side of Zeeland, we have a lot of fiber development that's along that Chicago Drive corridor right there where there's a lot of businesses, and the New Zealand Hospital is out that direction. closer to home here in town, this is the downtown corridor. This is 7th, 8th, 9th Street. One of these little pink dots is Hops on 84th Street next door. They have our fiber service. This is our shared gigabit GPON infrastructure. As we explored providing broadband services to our community, we were getting a lot of kickback from the community. Well, that sounds great. How come I can't get it? What can you guys do to get it to me? I'm a small business or I'm a resident. We did not serve them in our business model very well. We needed to find a way to do it. That's by building high density fiber with an affordable service on it. And so in order to do that, in 2016, we did a research project on fiber to the home and found out that it was going to be pretty expensive and it's a hard investment to do. In 2018, we said, well, let's try to do it a little bit. And this is really to respond to City Council, who does a strategic planning session every year, and they put down the priorities for our city. Broadband development was a #1 priority for a few years and was only displaced by housing, which is more of a critical issue for our community now. To respond to that, we decided to do a pilot project where we built fiber into all the coffee shops and hooked them up with a gigabit service and said, how do you like it? They said, this is great. And okay, well, thank you. The pilot's over. And they're like, no, pilot's not over. You can't have your internet back. It's too nice. We're willing to pay for it. Oh, okay, well, let's make it into a service. So we did an expanded pilot to provide fiber connectivity to all the buildings that front A Street and are actually all the buildings between 7th and 9th Street. So that's mainly A Street and the backside of the buildings. By building fiber down 7th Street and up 9th Street and feeds into the back of 8th Street, which is how all the utilities serve the 8th Street corridor, and had over 200 people sign up. So we have businesses, residents that live upstairs on the 8th Street that sign up for the service. Very successful. That's what brings us into, okay, downtown seems to be good. We have a business model that's sustainable. We're able to pay for it. The revenues that we receive from providing internet service downtown pay for that service, the cost of supplying that service, and for that fiber development. And we needed to ask then the question to the entire community, what do you think about that? We have a project, we have an idea, we think it'll work. Do you think it's a good idea? So in 2019, we established the Broadband Task Force that was led by the city and the BPW to ask the question, what is the value of building fiber to every single property in the city of Holland? Is that a good idea or not? We took our cost estimates from 2016 and updated them, and I did a listening tour. I grabbed leaders of constituent groups throughout our community. So I talked to Hope College for an education community, to the Holland High School superintendent of Holland Public Schools. He was on our task force. I spoke to aging population. I talked to the director of Evergreen Commons, the hospital, business, special needs groups such as low income, folks with disabilities and so forth. And they're all like, yeah, the internet's really important to us. And as I was going through that listening tour, COVID hit. And all of a sudden, everybody went home. And everybody's story shifted just a little bit. It went from, yeah, internet is pretty important to us and it's a valuable tool, to it is an absolutely necessary tool that we must have, and what we have is not good enough. The superintendent of Holland Public Schools was putting school buses throughout town with Wi-Fi in them so kids could drive over to the school bus to hook up to Wi-Fi because their internet service at home was not adequate enough. We had folks that were driving in to park at the Civic Center because they had no internet at home, but we had a public access Wi-Fi at the Civic Center that we had developed as a pilot project with the Smart Zone Economic Development of Holland for the city market. The folks working at the city market needed to get online to run credit cards when they're selling their plants and their food and their coffee and everything. We built fiber out to a lift station we have there. We put public Wi-Fi on, and that thing would turn on for the market and would turn off after the market was done. When COVID hit, we just went out and turned it on and left it on. And it was a tremendous benefit for the community. We had some regular users out there, and I have really cool charts where you can see how many people are connecting. Pre-COVID, not too busy, and all of a sudden, poof, took off. This whole activity in the task force led us to a community-wide broadband survey. We asked folks what they thought about it, and they said, broadband service is like a core utility service, like electric or water. It's an absolute necessity. It needs to be a right that everybody can get that, can afford it, and have it available. 70% of our community said absolutely. Community owned, 72% of the people of Holland said, we think it's a great idea to go ahead and build a community-owned, municipally run fiber optic infrastructure. We've already had one for 30 years, but this is a sign off. Two things. One, what you're doing, keep doing it. The other one is our Board of Public Works is something that is a point of pride for our town. We have the lowest, some of the lowest power rates in the state and the highest reliability and customer service, some of the best customer service. That's that number, 72%. 65% of the people said that they think a community investment to make this happen to everybody in the city of Holland is a good idea. This is the green light to move forward with Holland City Fiber. We might have thought it was a good idea. We might have had a plan, but we're not gonna make that decision. That's a community decision. And there's the community decision right there during this poll. That launched us into Holland City Fiber. And Holland City Fiber was an initiative yes, we have a question. Yes, please.
We have two questions from the chat. One is from Mark. He asks, how can the infrastructure costs of running fiber to Saugatuck High School be justified? Does their usage fee cover the costs, or is it done at a loss?
That's a great question. So the fiber optic cable is a single cable that runs from Holland to Saugatuck. We shared the expense in building that fiber. So it was going to be built anyway. We own a fraction of that cable. Since we have that cable there, the BPW provides broadband services on that cable. That particular cable feeds a couple cell phone towers. It feeds a couple of very remote residents in that part of town that had no internet service at all, but they could afford a high-speed quality and admittedly expensive rural fiber connection, but they're there. We also provide fiber optic services to businesses in Saugatuck. We also provide bandwidth connectivity to the school itself. So the school has fiber, but we provide connectivity over that fiber optic cable and the network electronics and so forth. So yes, that's the long answer to yes. It is paid for through revenues that are associated with that cable. What's great about fiber optic cable is it lasts 25, 35, 45 years. This is an infrastructure that is there a long time. That means your cost recovery can be stretched out over a long time. It's not like buying a car where you better pay it off before the car breaks down. We pay our fiber off way before its useful life is over, and continue to earn the revenues on that for the maintenance and upkeep, which is how lets us maintain a sustainable network for so long. Yes.
One more question from Gary. I live in Holland Township. I have BPW water, but AT&T fiber internet. Any chance BPW fiber will reach me?
Yes. So our electric service started in the city of Holland, and over time it was added into the townships around. And I think that's probably as the population of greater Holland area grew and utility was needed, electric service grew into those townships. Now those townships are there and have communication options already. So I don't know is the answer to that question. I think that it really matters on how successful our city of Holland fiber is. I know it'll be successful because we've been doing it a long time already. How quickly can we get that up and running to where we can maybe respond to the demand of the neighboring townships? So when I talked to Howard Fink, the city manager, township manager at Park Township, he's like, Pete, when are you going to come build fiber in our township? I'm like, well, let me get things working for Holland, and then we can talk. So I think there's an opportunity for Holland Charter Township, Park Township, and other neighboring townships to build publicly owned fiber infrastructure. And it's something that you should talk to your township about if you're interested in it, so that they know that that should be a priority for them, and learn as much as you can about publicly owned fiber and share your passions about it. So I hope I answer your question okay. Yes, sir.
My question relates, I live in Allegan County, but city of Holland, but I happen to know two of the commissioners of Allegan County who are almost on a fetish that we're going to have high-speed internet throughout the county. Is the city going to be relating to help, since we're part of Allegan County? I mean, I realize people down in Pullman are not in the city, but they obviously just know the need. They don't have your educational background and knowledge of it. Is there any help going on there?
There's a lot happening in Allegan County and a lot happening in the nation. So the Infrastructure and Jobs Act allocated $24 billion for fiber optic development that will go to rural, unserved and underserved communities in the country first. Allegan is in the unserved or underserved bracket. Much of Allegan County is very underserved. Allegan County commissioned a task force that they have running today. Our director of utility services at the BPW, Ted Seiler, sits on that task force to share our experience and knowledge of broadband development that we have in Holland. With the folks making decisions there. They hired Jill as a project manager for broadband. So she's a paid position looking at ways to develop fiber infrastructure, fiber broadband to businesses and residents of Allegan. The great opportunity is the fact that you guys are unserved or underserved in Allegan. You will qualify for federal funding, which is called BEAD funding. The BEAD funding, they're working on identifying what that is and how to spend it. So you're on a nice trajectory to capture that. Allegan, just to finish out, Allegan is looking at not building a public infrastructure as we're talking about today, but partnering with private enterprises that provide broadband connectivity to make that happen throughout the county. Yes.
The entities that were opposed to Holland City Fiber use Traverse City as an example of a bad economic situation there with regard to fiber optics. Could you speak to the difference between their situation and what you expect to happen here in Holland?
Sure, I can only speak in general terms for Traverse City. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I have met Scott Menhart, who directs that. He works for Traverse City Light and Power, and their project's brand new. So you don't sign up the number of customers you need on day one. You need to build it out and wait for that, what we call a take rate, or that adoption rate to lift off. Matt says that their trajectory is on course to make a sustainable business model that will serve their community. So I think when people talk about Traverse City as a failed network, they're looking at how many customers are on that network, and is that number of customers the number that they need to ultimately be successful? Those are two different numbers. Our network will be absolutely the same way. We'll have to sign people up. It'll take us multiple years to build fiber throughout the community. We're not going to be able to sign up everybody that wants to sign up on day one. So our take rates are not going to be where we ultimately want them to be. But we fully expect them to be there. Now, the other part of that is Traverse City's project is their cost recovery is based on the revenue from the project. So they build fiber, they borrow money, they build fiber, and then they pay back what they borrowed to build that fiber through revenues that come in by providing service on that fiber network, providing internet service and connectivity for businesses. Holland is not the same. We have a millage to pay for that. So our millage is up to $30 million. The board will vote tonight on a budget amendment for broadband services for a budget of $24 million. We don't expect to spend $30 million. That is a wiggle room based on the economic situation we are in the country today. $24 million will be invested in building fiber past every single home in the city of Holland, and that's done. Doesn't matter how many people sign up, that's paid for through the millage. So the risk to our community in going in the red, so to speak, is non-existent because we have that investment by the community to pay for the fiber. Yes.
We do have another question from the chat from Karen. She says, so for folks in the city of Holland, in the Allegan County part of the city of Holland, will they get connectivity access to the new Holland fiber project?
Oh, that's a great
Or
clarification.
Allegan?
Yeah, City of Holland, of course, is on the border of Ottawa County and Allegan County. The City of Holland is a City of Holland project. So everybody in the city, whether you're in Allegan County or Ottawa County, will have access to that. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's so funny being in a city that's like on a county border. It's like, how did that happen? So, yeah, you had a follow-up question there. Yep.
To ask
Got a few minutes till 2 o'clock. You need something?
To ask my question a little bit different way, skeptics would say that if the economics of fiber optic in Holland doesn't work out the way it's hoped, that taxpayers might be on the hook for making up the difference. And if I understood you correctly, everything that's out there now is already paid for.
Everything that is out there today is already paid for.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank
We
you.
need to make a $24 million investment to build the city streets, the digital streets. And that is, whether you use it or not, those need to be there. And that is this $24 million or $30 million millage. That's that investment by all of the people, that decision to make that investment allows us to take that risk off the table. We know that's going to be good. And it's a lot like when we build electricity. Did we know that the guys downtown were going to want it in their shops? No, but there it is. It happened. Did we know the economic boon that downtown Holland would have because of the snow melt system? We rolled the dice on that one. We got it right, though. That's one of the great things about Holland, and maybe I'm going on a tangent from your question here a little bit, but one of the great things about Holland is we really think things through. When we roll the dice, we're pretty much assured that the numbers are going to come up in a way that we want to see them come up. We're very adverse to risk in this town. And Board of Public Works as a governmental entity is absolutely averse to any risk. So we wouldn't be doing this if we thought it was a risky proposition, to be honest. Yeah, it's.
I had a water leak issue at house. So I got here a little late and I might have missed it covered already.
I hope it wasn't a BPW water leak.
No, it's a sprinkler issue.
Oh,
You
yes.
don't want bubbling up water unless it's in a fountain in town.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so I may have missed this. Is it a concentric ring build process for the freeway of optics, or is it going to go certain directions or certain main arteries first? How will that work?
Sure. On the left here, you can see the city of Holland. This is sort of divided up by our substations. And the different colored zones sort of associate with our substations throughout town. Our fiber will be the same way, as they will follow our common mainline fiber optic cabling, which loops up all of these substations. And you can see in this very early sketch on how we might build out some neighborhoods. So we have a couple downtown neighborhoods, and it sort of goes section by section. So I think if I'm answering your question right, we will have a loop of fiber optic cable here for redundancy. The main line will loop all these nodes together. And as we do the project, we will start in one part of town and sort of build our way out. It has not been established yet. One of we are actually going to the board with the recommendation for our owner's engineer this evening. The owner's engineer we're hiring to help us do some high-level design and planning work. That organization will help us figure out what is the most logical and efficient and effective way to build out the city. I guess the only thing I would add is some parts of town, based on the millage vote, are very excited about fiber. And other parts of town are not as excited about fiber yet. They will be, I think. We may build to the parts of town that are very excited, because we know that our take rate will be higher. The more people you get on, the more revenue you have, the less risk and better cash flow we have for our business. Broadband is run as a business within the BPW. We are completely self-sustained in our financials. We have to make enough money in broadband to pay for that infrastructure and the services and the customer service that is provided in broadband. So it's a self-contained entity that we manage, and there's no subsidization on that, other than the community investment of a millage to pay for this initial development of the roads. Yes, sir.
I've got really about a three-part question, so
Oh, boy.
it's not proper. First question is, we live in the city of Holland, but we live at the links at Rolling Meadows. So we do not have city roads. We have to maintain our own roads. We had a big deal that we were not paying for garbage pickup. BPW had a group come out and tell us we weren't paying. We said, no, the association pays. And these young accountants didn't realize that we don't pay for garbage pickup.
Yep.
The association pays for that.
Yep.
I'm trying to think what else. Of course, the recyclables are the same way. So that's my first question, is what happens there? In other words, is the homeowners association going to be working with BPW, or are you going to be working with each individual family?
There is the devil in the details part of this project. Another great example is what we call an MDU, or a multi-dwelling unit. If you have an apartment building with 100 apartments in it, are you building 100 internet services in there, or can you build just one internet service and provide it to everybody as like the property owner? And it can be done either way. That's called a bulk internet. your community could possibly do bulk internet. It could be that BPW will come in and build fiber to every single property in your development, which is what we did. You have BPW electric
Right.
and you have a meter on the side of your home.
Yes.
So we would probably be doing the same thing with fibers. The fiber will very typically follow your electric service, come up out of the ground right next to your meter and get you hooked up. So the details of that need to be worked out. And that's something our owner's engineer will actually help us with. Yeah.
My second question involves public transportation. Amtrak has already announced they're going to have 3 trains a day from Grand Rapids to Chicago, probably another year to 18 months. So the Padnos Transportation Center will be much busier. So my first question is that connected to the downtown fiber today? And
Yes.
then the second question is, what about all our bus riders on Max Bus? Will they be able to, as they're riding along on the buses through the city, will they be able to do things on the bus or not?
You know, when we built electricity in Holland, we built it for lights. Nobody thought of TVs and electric washing machines. They actually, one of the first rates that we had was they came around and knocked on the door and said, how many electric irons do you have? And that they set your rate based on that. I'm like, what? We don't know what this will be used. And what you're saying is here's a potential use for this infrastructure. Absolutely. What's great about having that community-owned public infrastructure is we can innovate as a community and say, you know what, we want to put Wi-Fi on all the Max buses. So when people are sitting on the bus, they have great internet connectivity. Our town will have the infrastructure that would empower us to do something like that. So the answer to your question is maybe, if somebody really wants to do it and we can see a good value proposition, this is a good idea, let's make it happen, then we can make it happen. Citywide Wi-Fi is a question I get all the time. Can we just have Wi-Fi in all the parks? I said, sure. We'll have the infrastructure. I'm an infrastructure provider working for the BPW. The use cases, bring them on and let's see if we can make it happen. Yep. Yes, sir.
Can you point to the colors on that map that's showing which areas were more interested, which colors and which ones were less interested?
It's public knowledge. If you were to go to city and say, can you show me by precinct what the vote was on the ballot proposal for broadband, they can give you that. And so I can tell you that and feel good about that. That's not secret private information or anything. The downtown area in here was very high in approval for broadband fiber optics. And we think that there's probably 2 reasons for that. One is they have some experience with it. The downtown shared gigabit service is in that service area. The people there that use it absolutely love it. And they've told all their neighbors, hey, this stuff is great. You need to be able to get it to your house because it's great. I think that's the reason that you see that. The other part of that is this is a more liberal part of Holland. I think the liberal folks are more open to community investment and socialization, which is a millage is a socialization mechanism. They're more open to that. So we see higher voting in the downtown precincts. The outer precincts here is a lower approval rate on the millage. And so these are folks are more conservative. They're like, well, more conservative folks like to leave. They like to leave the opportunity for development in the hands of private companies. And so there's like, well, why would BPW do that when we already have companies that are going to provide that? And if the demand is there, they will rise to the occasion, right? Personally, I've lived in this town for 30 years. And I've been waiting for the private companies to provide the service that I need as a technologist. So maybe I'm a little cutting edge, but I have not seen that happen, which is one of the reasons I think as a whole, the millage passed is because people want choices. They want a different choice than the ones they have. Answer your question? Great questions. We have plenty of time. We're going till 2:30, right? Okay. Well, maybe I'll just get through the last few slides, which may answer some of these questions here. And then we can open it up to some more questions. On the right side here, you can see you can see some of the detail of what we need to figure out. These blue lines are distribution lines into neighborhoods. The green lines are distribution down to individual streets. And it's hard to see, but these amber orange lines are the fiber optic cables that run to every single property in Holland. We need to engineer the blue lines and the green lines. That's our distribution, or what is known in broadband fiber optics as the passing. That is the fiber cable that passes by every single home. That is like the streets that we have in Holland that pass by every single home. That is what our $30 million millage is for that infrastructure that empowers anybody that wants it to be able to get it. The little yellow amber lines are what are called the drop. And that is the cable that runs from the power poles or underground and into the home. That is called success-based building. We don't build fiber to a home unless somebody wants to use it. Then we'll build that fiber. That's the way your current communication service is. If you want to sign up for cable TV, the cable TV installer comes out and hooks up at the pole down to your house. That's success-based billing. The $24 million, as I mentioned, is the budget we're going for. That is for that passing. And the drops, which are $820, is our estimated average cost on those drops, is done when people sign up. We chose 51% adoption rate in our formula because we needed 51% of the folks to actually sign, vote yes for the millage. So if just over 50% of the people vote yes for the millage, we expect that they'll probably ultimately sign up for the service. And if they didn't vote, they're paying the millage. So they may decide, well, if I'm paying for the millage anyway, I might as well get an advantage of it and sign up for the service. So it's this is sort of a built-in number here because of the way our business model and funding model is set up. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're an open access network. What does open access mean? A closed access system is a road and there's only one company delivering packages on that road, right? Digital packages. This would be like if Holland only had one delivery company, maybe it's the US Mail, and FedEx comes along and says, I would like to deliver packages in Holland. We say, no, the only one allowed on our road is the US Mail. Okay, well, that's not the case, is it? We have open access streets where many different companies can provide services on those streets. We have choices of delivery providers. Amazon could decide, hey, why don't we start our own delivery company and deliver packages ourselves? Well, they did. And because we have open access streets, they can do that. And when pizza restaurants decided they were going to deliver pizzas to people's houses, the open access streets were there for them, right? We run our digital infrastructure the same way. Today, if you sign up for service with the BPW, you have choices of multiple internet service providers on our active Ethernet and dark fiber services. Our shared gigabit service is also open access, but we happen to be on our shared gigabit service. We happen to be one of the trucks on that digital highway, and BPW provides internet service as well. What's great about this is that bottom line choice. You have a choice. And when you have a choice, those companies are competing for your business. They can provide better services, better prices, better customer service. That's what competition does, and open access enables that. what does that look like in the business model? Because this is different than what we really are used to, right? So if you have a cable service, the cable service is your TV, it's your internet service, and it's for very good chance it's also your phone line as well, right? That's a bundled package. Also, they own that cable that's running up to your house, and they're providing the internet service, and they're providing the content that rides on that. That is the entire stack by one company. What we look at in an open access model is dividing things up. You have a common infrastructure, those city streets. You have service providers or delivery vehicles that are delivering. You have a choice of the different ISPs. And then the services that ride on top of that is open. So for example, you could get Hulu or Netflix or YouTube TV that rides on top of these, and you have 3 different organizations delivering that. In our model, BPW plays in this secondary space as well. BPW is not interested in the over-the-top services. We're not looking at providing phone service or video service. We think there's companies that can do that way, way, way better than we can. So why would we do that? We don't think there's companies that can provide infrastructure way, way better than we can. That's why we're here. And we're feeling that we provide internet service pretty well downtown, and we'll be playing in that space as well. That's open access. So downtown is working great. We've been building that out, connecting new customers up every week, and it's been very successful. We're taking that and just taking that model and expanding it to the entire city. And that is this project. So in August 2nd, the folks, I can't believe, it feels like it was a year ago, but you know, it's barely 8 weeks ago that the people of Holland voted yes to do this project. We've been going like crazy to get from this dot to the next one, which is this winter, is to do that design, that high level design work to come up with very well-defined plan where we can move into hiring a company that will do the highly technical design of where exactly do the cables go and where are you going to build first and second, and then go out and build that starting in fall of 23. So we have a year's worth of planning to do here before we're actually going to start breaking ground in fall of 23. Another thing is supply chain right now. It takes a year to get fiber. So I have to somehow figure out how to order fiber optic cable here this fall and winter, so we will have it on hand for next fall. So it's very interesting times, and you can imagine what my life is going to be like here for a little while. Each one of these dots has a whole bunch of little dots in between them. We'll see phase 1, the first neighborhoods in the city coming online. We are expecting right now is summer of 24. Yes, and I am ready for questions. Go ahead back here online.
We have one question from Robert who says, how does the fare structure compare to Xfinity or Spectrum, et cetera?
Yeah, so one of the initial tenets of this is it needs to be affordable. You can build the most beautiful, awesome internet service, but if it's more expensive than everybody else, you're going to have a hard time selling it. Especially in Holland, people are very price conscious. I shouldn't say just Holland. I think everybody is across the country. Price is important. If you can get it for a better price, what you need, then you buy the most cost-effective version. BPW's infrastructure, this project, and the revenue business design is designed to be very competitive. So we're looking at a gigabit symmetrical service costing about $45 a month, give or take. Now, right now, if you wanted to get that from Comcast, I think it's over $100. And that isn't even a symmetrical service. That would be a gigabit down and 20 megabits up we're talking about a gigabit or 1,000 megabits down and 1,000 megabits up also. So it's a very nice quality service for a great price. We think it'd be the best price. Value proposition, price is only part of it, you know. Customer service, brand recognition. One thing we're very proud of at BPW is the work we do, and we think that our community appreciates that. And maybe they'll go, you know, if I'm going to choose between Company A and Holland Board of Public Works, I know those guys at the Board of Public Works. They're very nice. I've been in the customer service center and talked to Subban. He's great. He's worked there for 27 years and people know him. We have people that come in to pay their bill just because they want to talk to Subban. That's the kind of service people want, you know? So, yeah. Yes.
This may be a really dumb question, but how, and I've wondered what the answer was since I began to understand what fiber optic cable was. How in the world do you splice several thousand little human hair size strands of glass and get the right signal to the right one?
That's a great question. That's a fantastic question. And I, as you know, having a degree in computer science and being a network engineer for many years, these are the questions I live for. So thank you to get me out of my business element. The strand, every fiber optic strand has to connect up to another fiber optic strand until it reaches a transceiver that is a laser light and a laser detector that's going to monitor that. Those fiber optic strands need to hook up, just like the garden hose that's too short in your backyard. Same way, you got to take those two garden hoses and screw them together. That's done by fiber optic fusion splicing. We have a device where you take each strand and you lay it into a splicer. It lines them up at nanometer levels, heats them up and pushes them together. And they become an individual piece of glass. So it's the fusion process is heat. The alignment process is a set of I don't know what they are, to be honest. Probably something like servos or a vibration detector sensor. I don't know the technology of those splicers, but they make splicers that are about that big now. So that's the size of I don't know. They're a little larger than a Big Mac, I guess. But so David's going to be able to answer the question actually, because this is his business.
This because in my career, I installed fiber optic systems for 30, 40 years. A fusion splicer comes in a case, and you take it, as he described, you take each individual fiber, match them up, and it mechanically does the alignment.
Yep.
By looking at following the light and so forth, so that gets the right spot, and then it heats it up and melts the glass, and it becomes one.
Yep.
So it's a combination of mechanical alignment and then the heating as he's described. You can always see if you drive around, and I know I'm kind of a nutcase, but you can see a fiber optic splicing trailer behind AT&T truck, behind utility and so forth. There'll be a little trailer and there'll be a little hatch on the back, and you'll all of a sudden see coming out of the handholds that he talked about, a couple of pairs of fiber going into that trailer, and that's where they have the fusion splicer set up. Now, with other types of fiber, there's also mechanical connections where they don't fuse them together. Over the years, they've developed that, but for a higher end installation like this, it's all done fusion. So, but in like a corporate environment, we would do some mechanical, some fusion, depending on what it was. That's correct.
Yeah, and I had a splice in my bag of tricks and it's not in there, so I got to find it. But I actually harvested a slice out of one of our old splice cases so you could see actually what it looks like, but it's not very exciting, you know. It's two pieces of fiber and they put a protective tube over it just to, you know, to give a little reinforcement to that splice and protect it within the splice case. but I'll try to remember to add that to my list for the next one. The newest technologies, because these fiber counts have gotten so big. When we built downtown, we actually have a piece of cable that is 256 strands of fiber in one cable. Well, that's going to take a splicer hours to take those, prepare, pull all the shielding off the fiber, get it nice and cleaned up, which is, it's all about cleanliness, getting it into the splicer, getting it fused and go and do the next one. It takes forever, but they have a new design for fiber called ribbon fiber. And this is a piece of 864 fiber. And you can go ahead and unscrew this and take a look, and you can see that their matrix is different. Don't stick your finger in there because it's sort of greasy, because it has water protection stuff on there, some fluid on there. That one, the splicer can shave off one layer of that, and he pulls up 16 strands of fiber. He can put that into a splicer. That splicer is designed to splice 16 strands all at once. So now he's like basically 16 times faster than he was otherwise. So ribbon cable in that nature is getting very popular because simply the efficiency of being able to splice it quickly. Yeah. And online, we have a question.
We live in scenic shores in Allegan, just outside of the Holland city limits. 3 years ago, Comcast laid fiber optic cable in our neighborhood, but we have yet to be able to get service. Still have to use Spectrum cable. Do you know anything about this installation? Are you working with them at any level?
I talk to Comcast all the time. One thing is Comcast builds fiber and copper infrastructure in our community and around our community. They're pretty busy doing all sorts of work. We've put in a little pressure on Comcast because we're coming up as really a competitive offering to what they do, which is great because the rising tide lifts all boats. Comcast is going to get better service and less expensive. Your particular case, I'm not sure. And the best thing to do is to call Comcast, and you know what that's like. You might not get an answer. But I know Comcast did a large fiber build in Laketown Township. Laketown Township had no internet connectivity to speak of. It was a real problem. There's a lot of folks that live in the dunes along there. They're folks that need to be online to do work, especially when they come to their vacation home up in the dunes and there's no internet. It's a real problem. Comcast came in and built fiber throughout Laketown, but I haven't heard how well that's going yet. Even in Laketown where, do you know anything about it?
Or I was going to make a comment there. They proposed, the township proposed putting in a system initially, and it got voted down or something. And so finally they talked Comcast into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And residents of Laketown Township were talking with BPW, saying, "Okay, can you guys come build the fiber? You have fiber running by down to Saugatuck. Can you build that out?" And we said, "Show us the money. If there's a business model that'll work and it's sustainable, and then we're more than happy to do that." It's a little different now because we're building Holland City Fiber, so our limited resources are devoted to our project. But I hope, as somebody asked before, Holland Charter Township, Park Township, and so forth, I hope that we can find a model that works, that we can provide connectivity into those communities, but that decision's a ways out yet. So, yes.
Farmstead will be built by Rest Haven.
Yes.
And I was told that we won't need to connect to any kind of cable service or television or anything. Do you know, is BPW providing service for that, or?
We provide broadband services into Rest Haven today. So they have a number of facilities throughout town, and we have provided for quite a while fiber connectivity to those communities. So we have a pretty good relationship with them. When they were working on the Rest Haven project, they came and called me up and said, can you make sure that we're going to have great broadband connectivity? Can you help with that? And I said, absolutely. So that was really cemented with Holland City Fiber. Our job is to make sure that every resident in the city of Holland has access to our fiber if they want it. So we're working with Rest Haven. If you're familiar with that project, that parcel on 24th Street, East 24th Street, has been leveled out, and they will be starting to build. One of the first things that happens is building utilities. You got to put the new sewer lines in, you got to put the new water lines in, the new electric service in. That's all going to happen first. Well, guess what? Fiber too. So we are partnering with electric as they go to build electric service in. We'll be placing the conduit, this orange cable or orange conduit that we will later run our fiber optic cable into. So we can do this today and we'll do the fiber later. Yeah. If you ever see this sticking out of the ground around town, that's probably orange means communications. That is a fiber optic or possibly copper cable underground. It goes inside of this. This is a very fancy Teflon coated conduit that some company sent me and said, you should put this in. I'm like, that's nice. It's really expensive though. But I use it as a demo for this stuff. You will see this go in. You'll also see yellow pipe go in. That's gas. You also see red pipe go in. That's electric. So our electric services group is very busy undergrounding things throughout town. So if you ever walk around a construction site and see conduit, depending on the color, is probably what it's used for. Yes.
We know, I noticed February of fall of summer of 24 was when you were going to, do the first. Long term, what are you thinking? 5-10 years out for the city?
Oh, that's a great question. And if everything was smooth and perfect and we knew it was going to be easy, we could get everything we wanted, we could probably do the whole project in 2 years, which is crazy. And communities of our size have done that. They have built these out in 2 years. Because of the labor shortages and materials shortages, we can't guarantee we'll do it in 2 years. So I just met with our consultants last week, and we thought they gave us a timeline of 2 years, and we're like, really? And they're like, well, we might be hard pressed. So we think probably 3, maybe 4 years. I think there'll be parts of town that'll be hard, and they may be out in the 4 year. We think most everybody will have it probably within 3 years, which is amazing for the size and scope of this project. So it's very exciting, but be prepared for a little bit of construction season for fiber. It's not as disruptive as like Pine Avenue or Lakewood, where the whole road is gone. They come in, they can really run fiber pretty quickly and get that all through a neighborhood. But we have infrastructure that'll require easements, so we'll have to put cabinets in the field. There'll be new underground fiber markers throughout town, so you'll see more of these orange posts and things like that. Yes, online.
We have one more question. What is the ultimate source of fiber for broadband?
The ultimate source of the physical fiber? Yeah, so the physical fiber, where's my fiber cables around here somewhere, is made up of really 2 things. It's made up of glass. The actual fiber optic cable is the fiber optic strand is that individual glass at the very, very core of these cables. The rest of it's plastic. And guess what? Plastic is hard to come by right now. When you talk about supply chain and materials availability, plastics are the problem. This pipe doubled in price here over the past few months. Doubled in price. And when you're buying semi-trailers full of this stuff on big giant reels, that adds up. The fiber optic guys cannot get enough plastic to make the fiber that's needed. So there's delays right now. So part of our strategy is how do we make sure that the materials, the supplies we need are going to be available? And I hope that answers the question.
He's asking the ultimate source for data.
The ultimate source for data is that is the internet itself. So our fiber, our broadband service. So you move from the GPON, right? The passive optical network, the fiber that's out in the community. That's a static infrastructure part. You have the data that moves around on that. That's a next virtual layer that's running throughout the larger network. Our fiber service connects up to what are called NNIs. It's a network to network interface. That's where our network hooks up to an upstream suppliers network. They have their own network that then is connected to other networks. And that's what makes the greater internet. We also have our own connection to the internet that we provide our internet service on. That connects to 2 upstream connectivity providers for full redundancy. So we provide 1 gigabit service. We have 2 10 gigabit service connections out to those suppliers that then ultimately connect on to the internet. And here's just one total nerd things for you. We also connect to the Detroit Internet Exchange or the Detroit IX. So if you Google DET-IX, you'll see the Detroit IX. That's where our data runs all the way into an exchange where a number of other providers live. So now I don't have to purchase internet service to connect our network up to them. There's no middleman. I go straight to the source. At the Detroit Internet Exchange is Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and all the other big providers. So when you get on to the BPW network and you want to talk, want to go shopping on Amazon, you're one hop over there. It's like taking a plane. It's like a direct flight on a plane. Hope that answers the question in probably more detail. And I'm right at 2:30, so I gotta stop. I'm not going to go away. So, but I do want to respect everybody's time. If you need to go, we can go. If you have other questions, I'll stick around for a little while if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Pete for coming today. I thought it was a great presentation. I think Holland BPW definitely is the pride of our community and what they've done in the past and what they continue to do. Looking forward. I just want to remind you, within the next 24 hours, you'll get an email asking for feedback on this class. If you could fill that out, that really helps us for future planning. We appreciate that very much. And like Pete said, he'll stay here if there's any individual questions. Is it in front of my house? My husband and I live in Park Township, so there's no hope for us for a while.
Sorry.
Which is too bad. But thank you very much, Pete. For
Thank
doing
you.
this
Thanks,
today.
everybody. Appreciate it.